Okay, everyone, this is key topic 4, life in Nazi Germany, 1933 to 39. It's quite a big topic, so let's get straight into it. First things first, we're going to look at the Nazi attitudes and policies towards women between 1933 and 39. So there were certain ways in which the Nazis thought women should look, how they should behave as wives. There was a motto as well, Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, kitchen, church. Divorce was discouraged and families had to be pure Germans, so Aryans, a way of making sure that Jews were not part of the state or anybody that Hitler thought was undesirable. Married women were supposed to leave their jobs. Men were given jobs first. Schools taught girls to be good wives and mothers. A woman's main role was to have children, and she was encouraged to have as many babies as possible. Abortion was banned because it would be denying a child to the state. And of course, Hitler wants as many children as possible to grow his Reich and to use as soldiers. Policies and laws. 1933, the law for the encouragement of marriage. What this did was to encourage people to get married by offering loans. 8 months' worth of wages, in fact. Women could only get the loan if they left their jobs. For each child a couple had, a quarter of the loan was cancelled. Women were banned from certain jobs like teaching, medicine, and government work. The BDM, the Band of German Maidens, was the girls' version of the Hitler Youth and became more popular after 1933. It's all the Hitler Youth, by the way, even the girls, but they've just given them slightly different names. But it all comes under the umbrella of the Hitler Youth. 1934, Gertrude Scholz-Klink was made Reich Women's leader and put in charge of laws for women. All women's groups were forced to join the German women's enterprise or they were banned. School textbooks for girls were rewritten to teach them about the 3Ks, children, church, kitchen. 1935 to 36 saw the Lebensborn, the Fountain of Life program, being started. It was to increase the birth of Aryan children. It provided money and childcare for women who had children with SS officers. Lebensborn's homes were open to support mothers. One home helped over 540 births in 3 years. Single women considered with good blood were encouraged to have children with SS men. The babies were then given to approved German families for adoption. The Nuremberg race laws made it illegal for Germans and Jews to marry. 1937, grammar schools for girls that prepared them for university were banned. As a result, the number of female university students dropped dramatically. The Reich marriage law, 1938. A husband could divorce his wife if she couldn't or wouldn't give him children. The Cross of Honor for the German mother, 1938. It was given on Mother's Day, or Hitler's mother's birthday, as a medal for having many children. Bronze for 4 or 5, silver for 6 or 7, gold for 8 or more children. Mothers with 10 children or more were expected to name one Adolf and make Hitler the godfather. They must be so proud. 1939, 1.7 million women attended Nazi-run courses on childcare and cooking, organised by the German Women's Enterprise. Effectiveness, did these policies actually work? Well, fewer women went to university, the birth rate did increase, but by 1937, some married women were allowed to work again. It kind of needed them to work again because the economy was gearing up for war. In 1933, 5 million women were working. By 1939, it grew to 7 million. So the short answer is no, it didn't work. Women's attitudes towards Nazi policies. Many women supported Hitler and the Nazis. Many women still believe their main role was with the family, supporting their husbands, supporting children. It's important not to judge these women by today's expectations. Important point is that even then, not all women agreed with Nazi policies. Many thought the laws hurt women and limited their freedom, but there wasn't much they could do about it at the time. Some women had genuine power under the Nazis. Leni Riefenstahl was a film director who made propaganda films for the Nazis. She had a close friendship with Hitler and Goebbels. Gertrude Scholz-Klink, the woman's leader, but she was often left out of important meetings. Some women got to travel, got to earn money, have new experiences through the Nazi women's organisations. What about the young? Well, the Nazis focused a lot on young people. They wanted Germany to last 1,000 years. and children were needed to keep the master race going. The Nazis believed all young people should love Germany and be proud of it. They should support the Nazi Party and Hitler. Girls should grow up to be strong, healthy mothers. Boys should grow up to be strong, healthy fighters and workers. Before Hitler took power, youth groups were already popular. The Protestant Church had over 600,000 children in its youth group. The Nazis were just one of many political groups that created their own youth group. But Hitler banned other political parties in 1933 and all the other youth groups. It meant that young people had no choice but to join the Nazi group. By 1936, the Nazis controlled all sports facilities in Germany. To use them, young people had to join the Hitler Youth. The Nazis wanted to keep children away from their parents as much as possible, so they would only hear Nazi ideas. Youth groups were used to fill their mind with propaganda when they were not in school. Some young people enjoyed being in these groups, but others hated it. Some felt confused because the Nazis taught them different things to what their parents believed. Youth groups for boys. Boys and girls were kept separate because the Nazis believed they had different roles in life. The Hitler Youth was divided into age groups, but they all had the same goal. Ages 6 to 10, the Pimpfer, the little fellows. Ages 10 to 14, the Deutsche Jungvolk, German young people. And 14 to 18 is the Hitlerjugend, the Hitler Youth. Physical aim, the Nazis wanted boys to be fit and strong so they could fight. How did they do it? Regular camping trips, hiking trips, and sports competitions, regional and national. The aim, create Nazis that believed in Nazism. Boys swore an oath of loyalty to Hitler. They went to special camps to learn Nazi beliefs. They studied German heroes and the evils of the Jews. They were told to report anyone who was disloyal, even their parents. Boys received a Hitler Youth dagger and a smart uniform, which made them feel important. And over time, they helped spread Nazi ideas that were going to grow up as Nazis, and they were going to have children who they would educate as Nazis. Military aim. The Nazis wanted boys to learn military skills from a young age and develop useful, practical abilities. Boys were trained in map reading, signalling, building forts. Signalling, that is not signalling, don't know why I said that. By 1938, 1.2 million boys were trained to use guns and rifles. Special training was available for those who wanted to join the Navy or the Air Force. Naval Hitler Youth had 45,000 members. Groups for girls. The League of German Maidens, again, divided into different age groups. 10 to 14, the Jung Mädel, young maidens. 14 to 21, the Bund of Deutsche Mädel, the League of German Maidens. Overall aims to teach girls that their main role was to be a mother and a housewife, to make them loyal to Hitler and the Nazis, and to follow the Kinder, Kirche, Kutsche motto. Similar methods to boys, political activities, swearing oaths of loyalty, fundraising for the Nazi Party, attending Nazi rallies. But it wasn't one of those women are gentle and belong at home kind of thing. They went camping, hiking, building themselves physically so they could be strong. Boys were trained for strength and leadership, preparing to be soldiers. Girls learned domestic skills like cooking, ironing, sewing, to be good wives and mothers. They were also taught about racial hygiene so that they kept the race pure and only married Aryans. School system. Before 1933, all children had to go to school till they were 14. After 14, school was optional. Boys and girls went to separate schools. Schools were mainly run by local councils with some guidance from the government. After 1933, schools were made to follow Nazi beliefs. The Nazi Party controlled what was taught. Bernhard Rust, the Nazi education minister, saw schools as a way to shape young Germans. The whole purpose of education is to create Nazis. Children had no free time without Nazi influence. School days were longer, and after school they had to go to Hitler Youth groups. This kept them away from their parents most of the time. School notice boards were filled with Nazi Party posters. Attendance was a big issue, as children could miss school for Hitler Youth events. One school with 870 students lost 23,000 school days in a year because of extra activities. Controlling teachers. April 1933, the Nazis passed a law allowing them to fire teachers who didn't support them. In Prussia, over 180 head teachers were sacked. All teachers had to swear loyalty to Hitler and join the Nazi Teachers League. They were required to attend Nazi training days, with 200,000 teachers completing them by 1939. Teachers were expected to act as Nazis in the classroom. Some still do. They taught students the Nazi salute, ended lessons with Heil Hitler, and displayed Nazi flags, posters, and pictures of Hitler. Around 30% of teachers who were members of the Nazi Party wore uniforms in class. They don't really support them now. I'll just add that was a joke, just in case somebody listens to this in a few years' time and moans about it. Controlling the new schools, Bernhard Rust created special boarding schools called Napolas. By 1939, there were 16 of them. The goal was to train future leaders of Germany. Students had to pass tests to get in. Instead of teachers, SR and SS members taught them. After school, students joined the army, the police, or the SS. The curriculum, race studies. Children learned to rank different races. They were told Aryans were the best and shouldn't mix with other races, especially Jews. Nazi charts taught them how to identify Jews by appearance. Children studied eugenics, how to create perfect children by choosing two Aryan parents. Okay, so this here is a brief look at the Nazi curriculum, the more traditional curriculum subjects. I'll let you pause this and have a look through if you want to. It'll give you some good ideas if it asks you about features or inferences and things. Reduction in unemployment. Unemployment in Germany before 1933. There was about 5 million Germans without jobs, 25%, a quarter of all the workers. People still remember the hard times after World War I and the Wall Street crash. For many families, having a job and earning money was far more important than politics. If you could guarantee them a good life, some money, a job, they're going to support you in these tough times. Why did Hitler want to reduce unemployment? Unemployed people were more likely to support the communists, who Hitler hated. The Nazis thought giving people jobs would make them support the Nazis and feel proud of Germany. The Nazis wanted something called autarky, self-sufficiency, so Germany would not need to trade with any other countries. It would make Germany stronger and prove the Nazis' success. So, first factor, the RAD, the Nazi Labour Service. It was set up in 1933. It gave work to unemployed people. The work focused on public projects like repairing roads, building hospitals, schools, sports facilities, like the 1936 Olympic Stadium and bridges. These projects were visible to the public and showed the start of a new Germany. It became compulsory in 1935. All unemployed men had to work for it for 6 months. It wasn't popular. It was run like the army, with uniforms and strict discipline. Number two, building the autobahns, the motorways. The Nazis planned 7,000 miles of motorways in Germany. Construction started in 1933 with Hitler using it as a publicity stunt. He turned up with his little spade to start digging, bless him. No, not bless him, you know what I mean. Construction started in 1933 with Hitler using it as a publicity stunt. Like I said, he turned up with his spade, started the job, loads of cameras there, they used it. By 1935, 125,000 men had jobs building the roads. By 1938, 3,500 kilometres were finished. The Nazis paid for it with help from big businesses that benefited from better transport. The roads helped trade and industry across Germany. Rearmament and conscription. Hitler wanted to rebuild Germany's army, which had been reduced by the Treaty of Versailles. Other countries didn't stop him because they wanted to avoid war. In 1936, Hitler put Hermann Goering in charge of a 4-year plan to prepare for war. In 1935, Hitler introduced conscription, forcing young men to join the army. This, of course, cut the unemployment lines because they know they had a job. The army needed more weapons, transport, equipment, so more workers were needed in the factories. Arms spending went from 3.5 billion marks to 26 billion marks. Aircraft industry jobs, there were 4,000 in 1933. There were 72,000 in 1935. So you can see rearmament leads to a drop in unemployment. Why do we trust the Nazi unemployment figures? Well, because of hidden unemployment. The Labour Service, right, was voluntary. Men worked for 6 months at a time. If they had no job after, they just weren't counted as being unemployed. Women were forced out of their jobs and not counted in unemployment figures. Jews who lost their jobs were also not counted as unemployed. Nazis changed how they recorded unemployment. Even part-time workers were counted as fully employed. Other countries recovered too. Many European countries naturally recovered from the Depression. Germany was not special. Concentration camps. Thousands were sent to prisons or camps and were not included in unemployment figures. And the army. 1.3 million men conscripted into the army, not counted as unemployed. So a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. Life in Nazi Germany. How far do they improve? Well, standards of living. A factory worker in Nazi Germany earned a steady wage, improving their financial situation, but their pay could still be low compared to others. A person working as a high ranking government official may have had a comfortable job, but someone working in a factory could have had a much harder life. Happiness. A person with a well paying job may not be happy if they're forced to work long hours or under strict control. Meanwhile, somebody else with a low paying job might enjoy life more because they got freedom. A Jewish person might not have had many choices or freedom in Nazi Germany, while a non Jewish German might have more opportunities and control over their life. So, workers' experiences. Some workers were part of the labour service, which they worked for the government. They were not paid well, they had no choice about the job they did, and for them, the standard of living may well have been low, even though they had a job. The rich, some Nazi officials became wealthy, but they lived under a strict regime where they couldn't do what they wanted. They might have money, but their freedom was limited. Different expectations. A man with a family may have seen his life improve with a steady job, but for a young single person, they may have felt restricted or unhappy with their situation. Jobs. How the standard of living improved for workers. More jobs, more people had jobs, so more families earned regular money. It helped improve their living situation. But did everyone benefit? Not everyone was equal. For some groups like women, Jews, and people not in the Nazi party, getting a job was harder. They didn't have the same chances as others. Enjoyment of work. Having a job didn't always mean people enjoyed their work. For example, young men in the German labour service were forced to work like soldiers for 6 months. It wasn't a job they chose, and they didn't enjoy it. Wages improved. Wages went up under the Nazis, especially after 1936 when Germany started rearming and many people got jobs in this area. Some people with higher paying jobs could afford luxuries like cars, for example, car ownership between 1933 and 1939. Did everyone benefit? No. Different jobs, different pay. Not all jobs paid the same. Workers in rearmament factories working on weapons and military stuff saw higher wage increases than those in the German labour service who didn't have the same pay. Price inflation. Prices went up about 20%, more than wages increased, so people's pay didn't feel like it went up that much. People in low skilled, low paying jobs still struggled. The cost of things like food went up, and it was hard for them. Did everyone benefit? Longer hours for everyone. The average working week went from 43 to 49 hours. It meant that people had to work more. Less family time. With longer hours, people had less time to spend with their families. Not more pay for all. Some low skilled workers, even though they worked more hours, didn't earn much money. Nazi organizations. The Nazis created three main organizations to improve the standard of living for workers. Hitler knew that if workers were happy, they'd be less likely to oppose the Nazi government. The German Labour Front, the DAF. This replaced trade unions. Trade unions are organizations that help workers with their rights and help them with getting better pay. Instead, the Nazis created the DAF, the German Labour Front, to control the workers. It helped protect workers' rights. It set a minimum pay so workers got a basic work. Sounds good. However, you don't have a say in pay. You could not argue for better pay. You had to accept what the DAF gave you. There was no protesting. Workers couldn't cause problems at work or they'd be punished. Strength through joy, KDF. The purpose it created to improve workers' lives, make them feel connected to the Nazi party. It offered activities like sports, trips, movies, and cheap holidays. Workers had to join to enjoy these benefits. By 1936, 35 million people were members. The Volkswagen scheme. Workers saved 5 marks a week for a Volkswagen, but no one got the car because production switched to weapons. Beauty of labour, the SDA. This improved facilities. The Nazis pushed businesses to add better facilities like toilets, showers, and canteens. By 1934, 34,000 companies had improved conditions, so that's good. But the workers had to do the work for these improvements in their own time with no extra pay. Some were threatened with being fired if they didn't help. So much for beauty of labour. Racial policies towards minority groups. This is how the Nazis justified their ideas about minority groups. National strength. The public was told that racial policies would make Germany stronger as a nation. Personal strength. They were told isolating minority groups would make Germany stronger and healthier. Science. The Nazis used science to prove their ideas, making people trust them more. Anti Semitism already existed. The Nazis used science to support it. Many Europeans believed in Charles Darwin's ideas of survival of the fittest. So they thought only the best race, the Aryans, should survive. This is called social Darwinism. After difficult times, many Germans were willing to believe these ideas for hope and a better future. Minority groups got the blame. They became easy targets, especially the Jews, and they were blamed for Germany's problems. Propaganda and censorship. Nazi ideas were spread everywhere through propaganda. Racial beliefs, eugenics and social Darwinism. Eugenics is the idea based on Charles Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest. Humans can make themselves stronger by choosing the best parents to have children. The goal was to stop inferior people from having children or marrying. Eugenics was taught in schools, youth groups, and used in Nazi propaganda. The Aryan race and racial hygiene. The Nazis believed the Aryan race was the best and superior to all others. People who were not Aryan were called Untermenschen, subhuman. They wanted to protect the Aryan race from being spoiled by inferior races, keeping it clean like avoiding germs. Nazi treatment of minorities. So you've got Slavs and Poles, physically and psychologically disabled, and homosexuals. Oh, and gypsies as well. These people were seen as minorities and undesirables. You can pause this section to have a look at what was passed to deal with them. Key terms. Eugenics is the idea of choosing better parents. Aryan is the pure-blooded Germans. The master race is the Nazi term for the Aryans. Anti-Semitic is hatred and discrimination towards Jews. Social Darwinism, people can improve the strength of their race by choosing the best parents to have children, and so on and so forth. Persecution of the Jews in Germany between 1933 and 1939. So this has been made ready for 2025. Not really come up a lot, this, so I've got a feeling it might. Persecution, anti-Semitism, citizenship, scapegoat, segregation, Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. Nazis attacking Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues after a Jew shot a Nazi in Paris. So anti-Semitism had long been around in Europe. It wasn't a Nazi idea. Religious reasons, some Christians blamed Jews for the death of Christ. Many were jealous of the Jews because they owned successful businesses and were wealthy. Some blamed them after World War I for Germany's defeat and the problems. This was wrong, of course. And false science. Some people wrongly believed that certain races were better than others, which made anti-Jewish ideas more common. The Nazis didn't invent anti-Semitism, but they used it to spread their racist beliefs. Long-term causes of anti-Semitism. Appearance, Jewish customs, clothing, hairstyles made them look different from others. Religion, their beliefs were different from Christianity. Some Christians wrongly blamed Jews for the death of Jesus. Jealousy, successful businessmen, successful financiers, and there's the false science. In the short term, Jews were not German. Germany was created as a single country in 1871. A way of promoting Germany was to promote being a true German. Jews were made to feel un-German. This, of course, was false. Someone to blame. During the hard times after Versailles and the economic depression, it was easy to blame someone else, like the Jews. A person who's blamed for something they didn't do is called a scapegoat. The influence of politicians. Many nationalist politicians, like Hitler, publicly spoke against Jews. It made being anti-Semitic acceptable and believed. Propaganda by the Nazi Party easily influenced the German people who'd not been anti-Semitic before the Nazis. Many turned a blind eye to the treatment of the Jews because their lives were getting better. How much did ordinary Germans help persecute the Jews? Well, there were helpers who tried to help the Jews and risk their own lives. There were the fearful who were against Nazi actions but too scared to resist. The indifferent who kind of ignored what was happening, focusing on their own problems. Supporters, some who fully agreed with Nazi policies and helped persecution. And unaware, some didn't know about the worst actions. So, how did the persecution of the Jews begin? Before 1933, propaganda in newspapers, speeches, Spread anti-Jewish ideas. Many Germans already influenced by these ideas, some Jews faced discrimination in daily life. The turning point was when Hitler became Chancellor. He could make laws. The Nazis slowly increased their persecution of the Jews. 1934, some Jews were banned from public places like parks and swimming pools. Some introduced segregated public spaces to keep normal Germans separate, claiming it was for their safety. The Nuremberg laws, very important to revise. The Reich law on citizenship, only people of German blood could be citizens, which meant Jews lost citizenship, any voting rights, and couldn't hold a passport. The Reich law for the protection of German blood and honor. This is another of the two Nuremberg laws. Jews couldn't marry or have relationships with German citizens. Jews were banned from joining the armed forces. In 1936, Jews were banned from professional jobs, doctors, teachers, and lawyers. Some anti-Semitic posters and propaganda were temporarily removed, especially during the Berlin Olympics to avoid bad publicity around the world. Jewish doctors were forbidden to treat non-Jewish patients in 1937. You've also got the boycott period as well, where people are told not to go to Jewish shops. In 1938, Jews had to register all their possessions with the Nazi government. They had to carry ID cards at all times. Germany united with Austria. Austrian Jews now faced the same persecution. Jewish children were banned from most schools. Jews were forced to sell their businesses. In 1939, Nazis decided to remove all Jews from Germany. Reinhard Heydrich sets up the Reich Office for Jewish Emigration. Jews were evicted from homes and prepared for deportation. When Germany invaded Czechoslovakia and Poland, it brought more Jews under Nazi control. And the idea of forced evacuation became almost impossible, which, as we know, led to something far more sinister. All Jews in occupied countries were forced to wear the yellow Star of David. Okay, so that is what you need to know about Chapter 4, which is Life in Nazi Germany. Okay, good luck.